All right, everybody, welcome once again to our what once started was quarterly, becoming every other monthly panel discussion, virtual panel discussions here at the Cannabis Workforce and Business Development Program, which falls under the guidance of the School of Continuing and Professional Studies here at Lehman College. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of myself, our acting dean, Kim Kendall, our director, Samira Bahrami, and our dean emeritus, Dr. Jane MacKillop. We're so happy to have you. As you can see in the background here, I'm going to do a quick plug for our program here. The Cannabis Workforce and Business Development Program exists here for all cannabis entrepreneurs who are looking. We consider our niche from idea to operational. So if you're looking for a place to come and have this beautiful shared workspace, we also have a conference room free of charge, as well as a very high-tech camera and recording audio and visual system that enables you to have, let's say, 50 people here for up to 50 people here for an in-person meeting, and an endless amount right there on the television screen for virtual audience. So it really is a wonderful setup for people just getting their businesses off the ground. Our wise governor, Kathy Hochul, set aside $5 million of her $50 million social equity investment for training, education, and advising. And that is how we came to be. Our great dean, Dr. MacKillop, had the wisdom and foresight to say, hey, this is a great space, and we've been doing this business advising excuse me, for the community in the Bronx and the social equity space forever. And why wouldn't we be perfectly destined for this next chapter? And so here we are. And I'm really thrilled about it. I've been here 2 years myself. We offer free business advising. We have these panel workshops. We have networking groups. Some of the exciting developments in 2025 include the formation of a Bronx-based stakeholders group. No acronyms. We're just going to be a networking group that includes dispensary owners, elected officials, and so forth, investors, people in the real estate space, people in the banking space. We can come here, I'm hoping quarterly, to talk about the Bronx cannabis industry as it's developing and what the needs are. So if you're Bronx-based, I hope you'll stay tuned to that. And in general, our program is here at, excuse me, I should say the satellite location, the main campus, many of you know, on Bedford Park Avenue and Jerome Avenue. We are located at the corner of Grand Concourse and Fordham Road. So we're located at a place called CUNY on the Concourse. And so we are existing in a very, very easy to access space here on the Grand Concourse. And as I said, free of charge for everybody in the cannabis industry. So do tell everyone and all your friends. All righty, we'll begin now with our introductions. As I said, I'm Martha McDermott. I'm the case manager here at the Cannabis Workforce and Business Development Program. I work closely with Juan Hernandez, our business advisor, and Samira, who serves as director overseeing the space and all of our programming. I'd like to introduce our panelists, starting with Dr. James MacKillop. Dr. James MacKillop is a professor at McMaster University, as well as the center director for the Center of Medicinal Cannabis Research, the Michael G. DeGroote Medicinal Cannabis Research. I think I've got it, as part of McMaster. He holds the Peter Boris Chair in Addictions Research and the Canada Research Chair in Translational Addiction Research. And he directs the Peter Boris Center for Addiction Research, as well as the DeGroote Center for Medicinal Cannabis Research. So as you can hear, lots of research expertise. His research integrates perspectives and methods from psychology, economics, neuroscience, and genetics to gain unique insights into the causes and best treatments of addiction. Throughout his career, he's used translational framework to connect the dots from basic research to clinical and policy applications. His lab has generated more than 400 peer-reviewed publications and other works, and the impact of his findings have been recognized nationally and internationally. So thank you and welcome, Dr. MacKillop. Next, we have Sang Choi. our research scientist from the Office of Cannabis Management, and also RPH, which is registered pharmacist, certified pharmacist, licensed pharmacist. Sang is a research scientist in the Office of Cannabis Management Scientific Affairs and Research Programs team, focusing on advancing cannabis science through research and education initiatives. Woohoo, education. Her team is developing and supporting scientific programs that explore the therapeutic potential and the comprehensive understanding of cannabis, leveraging extensive pharmacy expertise to drive evidence-based research and educational efforts in the emerging cannabis science landscape. Previously serving as the Downstate Dispensary Director for Etain, a woman-founded, vertically integrated medical cannabis company, where efforts focused on supporting patients during the launch of New York's medical cannabis program, way back in 2015. She brings over 20 years of pharmacy experience with expertise in HIV/AIDS, oncology, transplants, and fertility care. Formerly pharmacist in charge of a specialty pharmacy, counseling patients with complex drug regimens. Earning her pharmacy degree from LIU College of Pharmacy, she combines clinical expertise with a passion for education and patient advocacy. So you're perfectly suited to be at OCM, saying, terrific. And last, but certainly anything but least, Kevin King, our dispensary pharmacist from Fluent, formerly Etain, now Fluent. Please welcome Kevin King, a passionate pharmacist and advocate for innovative healthcare solutions. His journey into the healthcare field was shaped by a personal experience as he overcame a traumatic leg amputation as a child. This life-changing event ignited his deep commitment to healing and led him to pursue a career in pharmacy. He began his professional path in a compounding pharmacy and wellness center, where he focused on functional medicine and holistic approaches to health. With a growing interest in emerging treatments, Kevin transitioned into the medical cannabis industry when it launched in New York in 2016. Over the past 9 years, he has been an integral part of the state's medical cannabis landscape, applying his expertise to enhance patient care and champion the importance of research and evidence-based practices into this evolving field. Today, he continues to work in the medical cannabis space, helping to bridge the gap between traditional medicine and cutting-edge therapies, always with a focus on patient well-being. His experience and dedication make him an invaluable voice in the ongoing conversation about the importance of research in advancing cannabis-based treatments. A perfect bio, Kevin. I don't think I could have done it better myself. Terrific stuff. So just a few notes, operational notes for the evening. The way that we align the evening is that our panelists will each present a 10 to 15 minute presentation on the topic of their choice around medicinal cannabis research. And each will bring their specific expertise to that presentation. That'll take about a half hour, maybe a little bit longer. At the end of that, we will then open the floor to questions and answers. And I do hope that everyone has brought both questions and experience to the conversation, because we feel really strongly that the Q&A is the most robust part of the evening. There's so much misinformation, communication breakdown, and confusion. And we really think that these panel discussions are excellent ways to break down those lacks of communication. If possible, save your questions for after, at the end of all three presentations. And then what we'll do is, if you'll raise your hand, I can usually keep a decent track of who's raising hands at which point and at what rate. But as you can tell, we're fairly comfortable and relaxed here. So if I have any questions, I'll make sure to ask them. And without further ado, I switch the floor. I hand the proverbial mic to Dr. MacKillop to start us off.
Hi, everybody. Can you see my presentation? Great. It is not in slideshow mode. Oh, now it is. Okay. It is so great to be with you tonight. Thank you so much for having me. I am coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario, but I am a New Yorker by background. I grew up in New York, downstate at first and then lived in Binghamton for 9 years. And so I'm always curious to see what's happening. And I really appreciate the opportunity to tell you a bit about our Cannabis Research Center. And I'm delighted to be on the panel tonight with Sang and Kevin. We talk often about pharmacists as critical, honest brokers of evidence when it comes to medical cannabis. So I'm really delighted to be with everybody. So let me tell you a bit about the DeGroote Center for Medicinal Cannabis Research. I'm going to give you a kind of big picture perspective. And fundamentally, our vision is always to focus on an evidence-based understanding of medical cannabis, including both potential therapeutic effects and associated risks. Our goal is to not be pro-cannabis or anti-cannabis, but to be pro-evidence and to basically go wherever the data take us. Martha, you look concerned. Can you see my slides advancing? No, you're good. Everything's okay. Great. All right. So to achieve this mission, this vision, our mission is to really use the highest standards of research methodology to advance an evidence-based understanding of medical cannabis. And we really have 3 core strategies. The first is a local strategy to create a network of researchers and clinicians at McMaster University and our partner hospitals. The second is to conduct research projects that advance new knowledge and promote an evidence-based understanding. And then the third is, as Martha alluded to really address misinformation and some of the persistent mythology about cannabis by curating the scientific body of knowledge and promoting best available evidence. So just to give you a sense for what this looks like, my role is really creating a big tent at our university in terms of creating a network. I'm in psychiatry, and about half of our faculty affiliates are in the psychiatry department, but the other half are either in anesthesia, obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics, pathology and molecular medicine, health evidence and impact. I really emphasize that cannabis research is an incredibly multidisciplinary and broad area, and really cannabis contains multitudes as a plant, but also as a research topic. So we really try to promote anyone who's interested in doing cannabis research to be a part of our center. In terms of our research program, the way we think about cannabis is really kind of the yin and the yang of cannabis, that we believe that we need to know more about the benefits of cannabis in terms of what we think of as the on-target effect, the therapeutic efficacy of the drug, but we also need to know about the harms and what we can think of as the risks and harms or the off-target side effects of the drug. And this yin and yang of thinking about benefits and thinking about harms really guides our perspective. What this looks like practically is that in terms of therapeutic benefits, the yin, we focus primarily on applications to pain, both chronic and acute pain, to sleep disorders, to substance use disorders, and also to some somewhat unfamiliar topics probably, or unusual ones like antimicrobial resistance. In addition, on the adverse consequences side of things, we focus on understanding cannabis use disorder, how cannabis relates to other psychiatric conditions, how it has specific neurocognitive consequences, and can increase risk for some lung harms. And then we have a fairly sizable group of basic scientists and clinicians who are focused on understanding cannabis during pregnancy and potential harms to the unborn fetus, and the aspects of cannabis in breastfeeding. And all of this is kind of against a backdrop of how is legalization changing the use of cannabis for therapeutic purposes and the associated risks. Legalization, for those of you who don't know, happened in Canada in 2018. And so we just passed the 6-year anniversary of legalization. And really, rather than any singular impact, we understand legalization is having a continuously unfolding set of impacts that affect both medical applications and the risks and harms. So let me show you what this looks like in terms of a high-level perspective on some of our research. At the kind of basic end of the spectrum, we have some of our basic scientists who've been studying cannabinoids like cannabigerol and detecting evidence that it's an antibacterial or has antibacterial properties. And actually, in vitro studies, seems to be protective against MRSA, one of the most problematic antibiotic-resistant infections. We also have other basic research from our Department of Organic Chemistry focusing on how we can take existing compounds and then modify their structure and produce in large quantities minor cannabinoids to promote research on cannabinoids. This work was patented in both the US and Europe and has now led to a startup company that is able to produce large volumes of minor cannabinoids for basic and applied research. We do other kinds of basic research, like just measuring are labels accurate for what's on product. So we did the first study in Ontario looking at whether or not the labels of oral oils were accurate, and unfortunately finding that even post-legalization, there were a surprisingly large percentage of products that did not have very good label accuracy. We also do more basic biomedical research on the cognitive consequences of cannabis. This is an example of one of our brain imaging studies in which we look at how recent cannabis use is associated with decrements in executive function, in particular, a form of executive function called working memory. And here we showed that recent cannabis use was associated with reductions in brain activity in the regions the brain needs to make these kinds of cognitive decisions, and also underactivity in the task positive regions and overactivity in some of the kind of distraction-based regions. We also have a lung laboratory because even though there are many different formulations for cannabis and there are increases in people's preferences for topicals and edibles and drinkables, most people still inhale cannabis, whether as a dried flower product or as a vape product. So we have a lung lab in which we're investigating effects on lung function in terms of volume, in terms of lung obstruction, in terms of inflammation, and just the lung burden in terms of expired carbon monoxide and patient-reported descriptions of their lung health. And we also do observational cohort studies in which we study people over time. So this is an example of one of our cohort studies. This is a group of individuals who were recruited the month before cannabis legalization in Canada. And what you can see on the x-axis at the bottom is all the waves of data collection we've done from September 2018 all the way to October 2024. These were 1,500 community adults who we assess every 6 months, or during the pandemic every 3 months, to understand their cannabis attitudes, their cannabis practices. And on the y-axis, the other thing that you can see is the change in retail sales data for cannabis during the same time period. So when legalization first started, it started pretty small at about $50 million in sales nationally, and that's now grown to more than $400 million per month in sales nationally. So across this dramatic increase in cannabis retail sales, we've been able to map how attitudes and practices have changed, not just because of cannabis legalization, but also across the COVID-19 pandemic and the introduction of various new products like edibles. We do a lot of medical cannabis research, as you'd expect. That includes our own randomized controlled trials, but we also try to synthesize the evidence into making good recommendations to clinicians. So this is an example of a recommendation we published in the British Medical Journal on cannabis for pain. And we synthesized all the data across all the published clinical trials, synthesized the benefits, synthesized the harms, and ultimately came down in making what was defined as a weak positive recommendation for cannabis for pain, depending on whether or not a patient was open to some of the harms or the side effects, but generally finding some evidence of consistent benefit. And most recently, we've been funded by the federal government to create a national clinical trials network. And this is a network of 13 different sites across universities across Canada, a collaboration between McMaster University and the University of Toronto and the University of Manitoba. And what we're really trying to do is create a national infrastructure to execute more randomized controlled trials for medical cannabis, because as much as we value curating the existing evidence, we really need more high-quality RCT evidence to answer some of these pressing questions about cannabis for mental health conditions, cannabis for pain, cannabis for other indications. We're also doing trials on the treatments for cannabis use disorder. The reality is cannabis use disorder is not a myth. Some people do develop problematic patterns of use. I'm a clinical psychologist by background. I treat patients with cannabis use disorder. We're just now concluding our initial pilot trial of deep repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation for cannabis use disorder. We're getting really great results so far, although it is a pilot trial, but the reality is there are no FDA-approved medications for cannabis use disorder, no Health Canada-approved medications. There are some psychological interventions, but we need better treatments. And in addition to pursuing therapeutic applications, we are pursuing clinical strategies for managing cannabis use disorder. And then the last piece of the puzzle for us is this element of curating the evidence base, which is where we're really trying to be an authoritative voice on what we know about cannabis. There's an incredible volume of misinformation out there. If you Google cannabis for any condition, Dr. Google will give you the answer that is almost always take a lot of it, give it a try. And the reality is the evidence is much more complicated than that. So we really try to put out a lot of material on what the evidence tells us, imperfect as it might be. And so we do an annual conference every year. The last 2 years, we've partnered with the Research Society on Marijuana, which is a scholarly society in the US. Last year, we did a partnered conference in Toronto, and this upcoming year, I'm sorry, that should say 2025, not 2245. That's not in 1,000 years. But in 2025, our joint conference is in Detroit. This is the society that puts out the peer-reviewed journal, Cannabis. And we also have a knowledge translation initiative in which we produce material for the general public and clinicians and other concerned stakeholders, often family members. This is called Bud Talks and is basically a translation of what the evidence tells us into materials that are intended for the general public. We have done 2 so far. One is on cannabis in seniors, because we know that seniors are the largest group in terms of adopting cannabis as a medical strategy. The largest increases in the population are among seniors, but also some of the highest risks are among seniors in terms of falls or interactions with existing medications. So our Cannabis in Seniors Bud Talks really focuses on answering those pressing questions. And we also did the Bud Talks on cannabis use disorder, which provides a user-friendly understanding of what is cannabis use disorder, what to do about it, and how to understand it. And I'll drop links to those in the chat over the course of the presentation. But go to budtalks.ca and you can get access to our free knowledge translation products. And then the last piece of the puzzle is we have more than 130 videos on YouTube that try to provide real-world evidence that's accessible and really tries to demystify a lot of the pressing questions when it comes to cannabis. So if you're interested in cannabis and you like YouTube, just pop in MGD CMCR and you'll find our channel. And I hope you find it informative. So that's kind of a whirlwind of what we do. Thank you again so much for having us. I think that if there's one kind of meta comment, it's that this is how broad the landscape is. Cannabis research is not animal models and petri dishes only. It's human trials, it's neuroscience, it is observational cohorts. This is an area where we really need the best available evidence. And I'm delighted to be a part of this and look forward to discussing it more. Thank you.
James, cannot thank you enough for that. I wrote and wrote and wrote so fast, and you saw my face for concern because I was trying to make sure that I was admitting people as they were coming in. My apology. But I had, first of all, I just want to say I had no appreciation for the microbial, the Mercer virus, which I know is quite serious. That's exciting.
Really serious.
Yeah, and I think life-threatening, correct?
Yeah, antibiotic resistance is a huge problem in hospitals. There's a real tragedy when people go into hospital and come out sicker than when they went in because they develop these they're infected by these antibiotic resistant viruses. So it's a really big deal, and we don't think about this medical application, but it may be the next generation of antibiotics are coming out of cannabis.
I love the way you say that. You're right. We don't think about that. We don't actually think about that. You also raised the minor cannabinoids, which of course always makes me jump in my chair because there are so many. And there are so many thrilling. Is there one that you like, you think is the most exciting or that has the most potential?
Well, so, we think of cannabis, we think of THC and CBD, but I think CBG seems to be a really interesting minor cannabinoid. CBN is the other one, cannabinol, that people are very interested in. And I think that this is an incredibly prolific plant. It has, we used to say that it has more than 300 cannabinoids, but there's actually a database now of all the biologically active molecules in the cannabis plant that has found more than 3,000 biologically active molecules. So this is just this was a federally funded Canadian project. I'll see if I can find the link to drop that in the chat. But the incredible array of molecules from the cannabis plant really may lay the foundation for all sorts of novel medical applications in the future.
No, it's so exciting. So exciting. And first of all, Dr. Google had me giggle. We all know Dr. Google. Oh dear. But your YouTube, what is your library? Did you say 105?
132 videos to date. So one of the things that we've tried to do is all of our conferences and all of our speakers, we try to record them and then make them available, because the thing is the people want answers. And if we're able to bring the experts to McMaster, we feel like we want to produce that also and make it available to everyone else.
That's terrific. That's terrific. What a resource. What an amazing resource for all of us. Thank you, Dr. MacKillop. What an amazing, amazing kickoff to this discussion. Thank you again. All right. With that said, we're on to Sang. You ready, Sang? Terrific.
Okay.
Take it away.
Are you able to see my slides? No? Okay, let me try that again.
I'll unmute myself. There we go. I think we've started. There it is. And then if you go to slide mode. Oh, you know what it is, Sang? You just click on the first slide, like we found earlier.
Okay, hold on. Is that good?
No, now we're seeing the Zoom link.
Oh, okay. What?
Wrong tab.
Oh,
There
yeah.
it is.
There you go.
Well done. Bravo.
Okay, one day I will learn how to do this.
Listen, fun with technology. We always say here, fun with technology.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm just really happy to be here. Especially Dr. MacKillop, listening to all the things that you're doing at your center. It's pretty inspiring, and hopefully that we can get there one day. Once you kind of love the plant and you know about this plant and all its amazing properties, you can't help but want to know more about it. So hopefully we're on the right path here with research in New York. So I just want to start off talking about what the OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, is doing to support these cannabis research license. So Section 38 of the cannabis law provides for cannabis research license, which allows for individuals to produce, process, possess, and purchase cannabis for the purpose of conducting research. And some of the types of research that allows for is listed on the slide, and is to test chemical potency and composition levels, conduct clinical investigations of cannabis-derived drug products, to conduct research on the efficacy and safety of administering cannabis as part of a medical treatment, and to conduct genomic or agricultural research. So as of now, we have been working very diligently with our applicants to basically collect and evaluate all the items related to their research. And we have somebody on our team, and what she does is just very expertly look through these applications. And if something is missing, we will collaborate with the applicants to make sure that the missing pieces are, they've been taken care of, and that the license is or the application is complete. And as of date, I'm very happy to report that we do have, a couple of licenses under review. And we actually have 2 applicants that were approved at the beginning of the month for research. So basically what we're doing is we're working to educate researchers about the cannabis research license and to encourage more high quality cannabis research studies in New York State. So listed as some of the resources that are available to some applicants. So we have a fee waiver request form. So the prospective applicant can request to waive the $250 application fee and a $500 licensing fee. And those are granted based on the size, scope, and duration of the research project, or if the applicant can demonstrate financial hardship. And if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to our research license information there.
Saying, quick question, do social
Yeah.
equity applicants have special waiver status and so forth?
I think it's really based on the research license application. So we're just, analyzing that application and not related to anything else.
It might be its own carve out, in
Like
other words. Right?
individual, it's an individual sort
Yeah.
of application. Yeah. And so also on our website is a form to request a consultation, which I think is really important because cannabis research in New York is pretty new. So if anyone has a question on how to just any question about anything on cannabis research, they could always reach out to us. Okay. Also, just one more thing about the consulting. And organizations or schools who are interested in learning more about cannabis can also request a speaker request form. So we'd be happy to go out and virtually or in person give a presentation. So we know that conducting research, cannabis research, is a massive challenge. So in meeting and speaking with researchers across the state, some of the main challenges continue to be institutional restrictions on cannabis on campus due to fears of losing federal funding, lack of funding to start and complete research studies, and some researchers do not have the appropriate infrastructure to conduct research. And this includes things like staff, such as research coordinators, equipment, facilities, or space. So how can we support research in New York State? So we encourage researchers and other OCM licensees to support each other in advancing research. And these are some of the ways that we can support that. You can sell or donate cannabis products for studies, provide space at their approved sites to conduct research, provide access to equipment, instrumentation, or analytical testing and services. So we encourage anyone interested in learning more about cannabis research to visit our website, www.cannabis.ny.gov/research. So I put these slides in here, the medical cannabis program education and outreach. I think it's very important, the work of some of our the advisory board and our ambassadors. So let me go into that a little bit. So we are actively growing, trying to grow and expand the medical cannabis program, and outreach and education continue to be a priority for us. So we have two educational initiatives related to the medical cannabis program. We have the Medical Cannabis Advisory Council and the Medical Cannabis Ambassador Program. So MCAC, which is the Advisory Council, develops clinical guidance documents and resources that will help guide practitioners interested in certifying and treating patients with medical cannabis. And they have also been focusing on conducting a systematic review of the literature on the use of cannabis for several conditions. And they recently completed a clinical resource document focused on irritable bowel disease, or IBD. And this document is actually under review by the OCM and will be published as soon as it's been approved. And they are also working on developing a resource that focuses on developmental and behavioral disorders such as ADHD and autism. So we are very, very grateful for the work that they do, and they are instrumental in our clinical education efforts. Okay, so the other program developed by the OCM is the Medical Cannabis Ambassador Program. And they consist of certifying practitioners who serve as medical cannabis ambassadors. They conduct presentations and trainings across the state to help provide cannabis education to patients and providers. And they've spoken at a variety of events, including patient support groups, community events, and on scientific panels. So if you or an organization is interested in having an ambassador at an event to talk about research or anything about the medical program, you can request and sign up for this form. So we are, again, very grateful to our advisory council and the ambassadors for their commitment to help advance cannabis science and education. Okay. So lastly, I am pleased to announce that we'll be hosting our second annual Medical Cannabis Symposium later this year. Our inaugural symposium, we partnered with Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center last September in Buffalo, and we hosted a full day of workshops and evidence-based presentations. And it was really successful. It was well received and well attended. So we're actually planning another one in early November in the downstate region. So please stay tuned for additional information. It's not on my slides, but I did want to mention that because education is so important to us, we have started NY Cannabis Ground Rounds. So our first one was this past Monday. It was on Monday, and it was on cardiovascular risks and cannabis. So we will be conducting a cannabis ground rounds once a month. So again, please stay tuned and also sign up for our newsletter so that you have that information. Thank you.
You're saying that was fantastic. I also learned a tremendous, extraordinary amount actually about things going on at OCM that I had no awareness about. For example, I am so excited. I can't stand it. You can actually donate. You can donate facility space as well as machinery, or so.
Yeah.
Can you speak about that?
So basically, some of the barriers to research is just not having the right infrastructure to do so.
Right.
So if one of my slides, we talked about like basically collaborations, right? So let's say you want to do research, but you don't have lab space. So there is a list called the collaboration list, which lists all the facilities that are willing to work with researchers.
Wow. So you
includes,
can apply for your
labs,
license.
Yeah,
And then get
cultivation.
matched. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's so we're trying to make it as easy as possible so that conducting research is not as difficult.
You make me want to have, same with you, Dr. MacKillop, but I'm sure the same is going to be true with you, Kevin. I'm going to want to run this panel again in like 2 weeks. This is information people
Let's
need.
do it. Let's do it. We're happy to get the word out there.
One of my questions has been for quite a while, who does research? Who would be the one to sign up? What person? Okay, I think it's interesting, but am I qualified? I'm just Martha McDermott with an MSW, even if I didn't have that. Can anybody apply for a license?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that's amazing right there.
Much.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, I won't take up too much time because I know everybody has their questions, and I did promise that I would, but I will say one thing, the plug for the grand rounds. I was very, very happy to have attended it yesterday. And I don't know if everyone here knows Dr. Maurice Hinson, but goodness, follow him wherever you can. He is really, really good. I thought so at the conference as well. I was a virtual attendance at the Buffalo conference that Sang alluded to earlier. He knows so much, but the best part is he's from the community. I think he said he's from the South Bronx, if I'm not mistaken. So he understands cannabis from all sides, sitting on the stoop as a youth, as a youngster, and having it be in his community and people, consuming and it being a part of life. And then he went on to an illustrious medical career at New York and at Weill Cornell, and then also Johns Hopkins, I think. So anyhow, follow him wherever you can and attend these grand rounds. They're great. And now I'll be quiet. Kevin, take it away.
All right, let's see if we get this shared. First off, thank you for having me on here. This is my favorite subject to talk about. This is great. Let's see. Does that go? You seen the slideshow? Did it not go to slideshow yet? There we go.
There you are. Now we're good. I was telling you we're good.
Yes, fantastic. So research is super important, and I'm really going to focus on how we use this research, the real world application in the dispensary. I'll walk you through the dispensary experience, how I handle a patient consultation, and where I use this research that we're talking about, because I really rely on it in my day-to-day. when patients come into the dispensary, they really don't know what to expect. Most patients coming in have a lot of, preconceived notions about cannabis, misconceptions, a lot of concerns. Out of the gate, a lot of the initial concerns are surrounding being labeled as a stoner, becoming dependent. A lot of the patients coming in are already on opiates and other medications that have some dependency issues, and they're hesitant to add on another one. They're expecting that they're going to be impaired all the time, that it can't be used in combination with other medications, or that it's a cure-all, or that only severe conditions or gateway drug is going to lead to other things. So there's a lot of concerns when patients come in, and one of the first things that I really focus on is kind of answering questions, really coming from a place of education and alleviating some of those concerns. With a new patient consultation, they come in with a list of issues. That's really where we focus is what are the primary concerns that we're looking to address? Because if I know what we're looking to address, then we can help to match products. The majority of our patients are looking for either chronic pain management, trouble sleeping, cancer-related treatment and side effects, other conditions like we've seen a fair amount of dementia care patients and the elderly population. So there's a huge variety to the ailments that people come in with, but as well, the walks of life. I think my youngest patient was 22 months. My oldest patient was 98. So we've seen the full spectrum on the patient side. And cannabis comes in many, many forms. As Dr. MacKillop was saying, there's over 3,000 bioactive molecules. I've told people there are hundreds. I'm going to amend that to say thousands these days, because it is just amazing how many new applications are being found constantly. And that just sort of highlights the importance of staying up to date with current research, because it's constantly changing. And we've learned just the tip of the iceberg in reality about this plant. And there's a lot more to learn. And even just the products I carry, we have many different blends, many different ratios, and the different products have their fit in different areas. Some are better for pain management, some are better for sleep, some are better for anxiety. It really depends on what those cannabinoids are and what that blend is. And, there's a fair amount of, expectation management too. Some patients come in expecting that this is going to be the magic bullet. It is a fantastic plant, has a lot of benefits, but I have yet to find the magic bullet in healthcare. If anybody finds that, let me know. This is up there in the top percentage there with potential impacts and potential benefits. And we take patients through that process. So really coming from a point of education. We see patients as follow-up, and in New York, involving pharmacists in this process is one thing that I think New York did really well, because pharmacists as a group really focus on that evidence-based medicine, as we've been discussing. And for me, it's kind of a unique role, because pharmacists are the primary contact with the patient doing dosing adjustment and helping to pick out products, which is somewhat unique in the pharmacy world. So it's been very rewarding for myself. And it's really come full circle. I started, my first experience with cannabis was when I was 15. I lost my leg in a traumatic injury when I was a kid. I have a lower left leg amputation. I had tremendous issues with chronic pain, neuropathy, and I started down that opiate road. So I was on high-dose opiates, OxyContin, oxycodone, gabapentin, amitriptyline, all these different medications trying to control neuropathy, which didn't control it all that well and left me not all that functional. And I was in a small room with about 9 doctors at a pain management practice here in Syracuse, and they really couldn't give me many options. And we were leaving without really making any progress. And I had a doctor chase me down the hallway, and he said, "Look, find a friend, go buy a bag of weed, give it a try. But if anybody asks, I didn't tell you that." This is back in the early 2000s, so it was very illegal at the time. And I did, and it was sort of the light bulb moment. Within 6 months, I was off opiates, and my symptoms were much better controlled. I was much more functional, and it was that moment where you realize there's something here. There's something kind of unique about this plant. It really has a lot of potential. It's really what led me to the healthcare field. And I've seen it both from the patient side and from the professional side. And it's really an amazing plant, and really has some very, very significant benefits. And there is some, there's concerns, and there's some potential harm that can come from it too, like everything. So knowing what those concerns are and what those benefits are and how to navigate that is super important. And it all comes back to the research. And I can't say enough about how big of an impact it's had in my life, and I try to translate that into the patient care. And as far as New York goes, there's no fees to become a patient. They do have on-site pharmacists at every dispensary while it's open, so you have that access to a medical professional. There's no minimum age limit. So when patients come in, if they're a minor, they do need to have a caregiver so that they will have, an adult support with them. And New York requires all of the products to be lab tested and approved through an FDA registered laboratory before they arrive at the dispensary. So there's an extra level of safety. Coming back to my experience when I was a child or in my youth with self-medicating, I didn't know what I was getting. I don't know how those plants were grown. I don't know what the cannabinoid blend was. Some of them work better than others, and it was kind of a toss-up with what you were getting. And I think New York's come a long way in rectifying that issue, and it really highlights the importance of getting cannabis from a regulated source that is being monitored and has, that medical support coming with it. New York also allows for home cultivation. So there's a lot of benefits to these programs. And I really like the support coming from the OCM and from the researchers in the field. And if you're interested in becoming a patient, you can register with New York. You just first have to see a doctor. Any doctor can become a patient or become certified to prescribe at this point. Once you see a doctor and they decide that you are eligible to become a patient, they'll get you registered, and you can sign up through the Office of Cannabis Management's online site. You make an appointment, you get certified, you get your certification number, gets automatically generated through the system, you get your piece of paper. It operates a lot like a prescription, where the doctor will certify for a given period of time, and they can specifically put on blends. They put on specific blends, or they can leave it open as pharmacist consultation. And at this point, most of those certifications come through as per consultation, which allows for adjustment in the dispensary, which I think is a really nice way to do it. Because if somebody's having, they try something and it's not working right away, they can come back for that follow-up and we can make adjustments, because this is not a one thing fit all. Everybody does respond a little bit differently. Some patients require small doses, some patients large doses. So it's less linear than traditional medications. So it's a very individualized type of care. And I think that just highlights the importance of having that active research, because patients' effects are so different. You need to have that evidence-based research to really answer these questions. And some of the most helpful resources I've found are right here. So the Michael DeGroote Center has some amazing research on there. I've been popping around through their available research on their website. I also really like the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, is a free online medical journal resource. There's the Institute of Cannabis Research, and then there is some paid resources as well. The Medical Cannabis Research and the Answer page also have some really great continuing education available on their sites. And I just wanted to wrap this up with a couple of patient cases. Our first case here is an 84-year-old male with dementia. He's in a senior care unit here in Syracuse. And when he first started, his wife and his primary care doctor had a consultation with me, and their primary concerns was trying to increase interaction. He's been married for 54 years, and when his wife goes to visit him in the care center, she noted he's been just kind of sitting in a wheelchair, looking out the window, staring off into space, not a whole lot of interaction. We started him on a 10 milligram dose of CBD as a capsule twice a day. And I got a call 2 weeks after starting therapy from his wife in tears. She said she went to go visit him and he wasn't in his room. And her initial thought was panic. Turns out he was out for a walk. He was out of the wheelchair, he was up and walking around. And he actually walked to the cafeteria and they sat together and had dinner for the first time in over 2 years. And it just had such an amazing impact on his day-to-day. And he's doing great. He's still on it. He's still doing really well. The nurses they see little things, like they went into his room and they had music playing and he was tapping his toes to the music. And they were just amazed because he hadn't done that in a very long time. So this is just the tip of the iceberg with the potential here. And we're still at very low doses, and I'm excited to see how he progresses further. Second case is a 6-year-old female on the autism spectrum. Primary concerns from the mother were self-harm tics. So this patient had a tendency to bang her head on the floor. So some attention span and interaction issues and a lot of trouble sleeping. Started her again on 10 milligrams of CBD as a tincture twice a day. And after 2 weeks, we increased to 20 milligrams twice a day. And at this point, the self-harm tics have resolved. She's no longer banging her head on the floor. She's no longer trying to eat random things, like hair was a big issue with her, and that's improved. They're noting more interaction, more focus, and she's sleeping better. And we are looking now at CBG and potentially some CBN as well. So those are two of the cannabinoids that are relatively newly on the market. Didn't really see them much until the last couple of years. And I think going forward, focusing on some of those minor cannabinoids and on some of the terpenes is where some of the research is headed here in New York. And that's where I think it's going to go anyway. So thank you very much. And really looking forward to questions and discussion.
Kevin, thank you. Thank you. As I knew it would be, totally informative about the patient side, which is, of course, you know, at the end of the day, that's why we're all here, right? In many respects. A question for you. I mean, I am really struck by your personal experience and how you, and this is something I've known you a long time and we've actually never talked about this. You didn't know the content of your medicine because it wasn't regulated and it wasn't tested. So you had no idea how much
friend of a friend. Yeah, you get, you know,
right.
Then you worry about, you know, there's growth stimulants and pesticides and all kinds of stuff that might be in there. And, you know, the safety concern with the potential with getting something laced in there or some sort of, you know, pesticide or something you don't want, there's a lot of potential for harm there. And I think that the research and the regulation is really a major step in rectifying that.
Right, right. I mean, I think that's an amazing point. The research also shows the contaminants. I'm sorry, the testing and the research shows the contaminants and can tell us what we can't. So it's very, very bad for us to even consider taking. I also was thinking about your range in patient age, 22 to 98, 22 months to 98. What was the 22-month tested for, or rather treated for?
Juvenile leukemia.
Okay.
So it
and
was
the 98-year-old was
chronic pain management.
Yes. Okay. Wow. I mean, that's amazing. Leukemia. And did the patient respond to the treatment?
They did. Unfortunately, that patient is no longer with us, but it brought an improvement to quality of life significantly, especially the parents came in. They were very, very grateful. They credited it with extending their time with their child and, you know, got the appetite up, got them eating better, so they were better able to tolerate the treatment. So has all these little side offshoots, you know, so even if we hear potential for cancer treatment, all of this, but in reality, if we can even just manage the potential side effects of some of the chemo and radiation treatments, they can keep, you know, weight levels up, energy levels up. You can keep people eating better and sleeping better. They're better able to tolerate these other treatments. So it all just kind of comes together, and it's a very collaborative approach.
Entourage.
Yes, the entourage effect.
Entourage. Kevin, we've had a couple of requests. Could you pop that slide up again with all of the research resources?
Sure.
We've got, in fact, I was trying to make my snippet tool work, but I fumbled. So I'm thrilled that you'll put it back up for us. How about the audience, aside from those two questions in the chat? Does anybody have any further questions? I know I have some prepared questions for the group, so don't you worry. But I wondered before I start with that, does anybody have any questions that they might like to ask? All right, going once, going twice. Okay, friends, so we're going to go to the first question, which I have prepared. Oh, there it is, perfect. And this can be to any of you all. Anybody can, maybe we can keep this slide up for a bit, Kev, if that's all right with you. Oh, wait, we might have one question. Oh, good, excellent. Casson, forgive me if it's Casson. I hope I don't say your name incorrectly. Feel free to take yourself off mute. The comment that Casson was sharing was, I'm interested in the antibacterial effects. I would like to learn more about crossovers over AI and quantum research. James, I imagine that might be you, right?
Yeah, I can speak to the antibacterial research more than AI and quantum computing, but the nature of that work is still pretty early stage. It's using basically preclinical models, petri dish based models to see if these minor cannabinoids are able to inhibit growth or successfully kill viruses. And in this case, Eric Brown's group here at McMaster did find that of a variety of cannabinoids that were evaluated, CBG in particular showed really high potency in a in vitro model as an antibacterial, and also in a mouse model showed good success in terms of killing methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is MRSA. And he was able to go on and then patent that finding. And the hope is that that kind of basic research can then provide the kind of building blocks to say, well, what if we turn that into a topical? And could that topical, probably with no psychoactive effect, be used for cleaning hands or cleaning surfaces to help protect against these antibiotic-resistant so-called superbugs?
That's CBG. I think I
CBG.
think CBG is gonna. I think we're gonna in years to come. Hopefully, research will focus on it. I think there's so many benefits. I hear it's one of the best anti-inflammatory as well. Is that right? To my knowledge.
Possibly. That's not familiar to me, but it sounds certainly credible.
Yeah, yeah. Levi, I see you, and would you like to unmute and share your question?
Yes, hello, good evening. How's everybody doing?
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. I just got a question that I'm a marijuana cultivator. I have been going for the past 3 years. Now a question I have is that I'm into getting into the the medical marijuana field, but my plan is to become a medical marijuana cultivator. But my question is, I seen that couple of people was on here talking tonight and about the research situation. Being that I don't too much know about the medical marijuana field, like would I be able to get into the field of of learning about it and where I could go to learn about it and research and like do research on it, and also like like if I was when I get into it, will I be able to like come there and like grow plants and do research on it, what I'm saying, of the effects of like, of what it'll have on a person, good and negative, and stuff like that. And in the like for me to like grow medical marijuana plants, like would I be able to learn further into the field that I really want to get into?
So, unless you have a license to grow medical cannabis, you can't really do that. So, and those are
I-
licenses like the RO, the registered organizations, are
Mhm.
able to grow medical cannabis. Our website is a really good and very comprehensive website that tells you a lot about what you're looking for. If you want to do research on sort of flower and its effects, you can do that, with regulated product. I mean, they can't be products that are unregulated. So you
Okay.
can, so then, I talked about the collaboration, or how other, cultivators and labs and other medical dispensaries, they would be able to conduct research with you, just depending on sort of what you want to do, and what kind of research you want to conduct. So, once that's organized, you could reach out to us. But yeah, you're not going to be able to grow medical products.
Okay.
Levi, I
So,
put
but
the OCM website in the chat.
oh, you put it. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank
Is
you.
that,
I appreciate your help.
you have
Sure, of
some more
course.
question, Levi?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you have some more on that question?
She, the lady just pretty much summed it up for me. I would just have to like she said, I have to go get the medical marijuana license and everything. So, yeah, I understood everything she said.
Okay, terrific. Terrific.
Yeah.
Kevin, we've also got a question about how medical marijuana, and it was directed to you, how medical marijuana affects getting or having a driver's license. I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to answer that, but you might be able to.
So in New York, I do get that question a lot from customers, asking, am I able to drive a vehicle? And it comes down to impairment. So I kind of phrase that in the same way you look at other medications. So with opiates and sleeping pills and other medications, they can be as impairing, if not more so, than cannabis. And same thing with alcohol. As long as you're not impaired, you are still able to operate a vehicle. If you are impaired, you cannot. So it's one of those, if you ever got pulled over after consuming, it would be kind of a assessment by the officer. Can you walk a line? Can you, obvious impairment test. But there is nothing that says you cannot operate a vehicle if you've used cannabis. It's cannot operate a vehicle if you're impaired after using cannabis. So it comes down to that impairment level. So there's not
the medical card won't have any bearing, right? The
Correct.
DMV is not going to say, oh, no, no, no.
Correct. No.
But there is a thing on gun use, I think, or gun ownership, right? Is there?
That's a little bit of a gray area. With the federal regulations, it gets a little gray because cannabis is still Schedule I controlled substance federally in the US. At the state level, it's recreationally legal. So you have this difference between state and federal laws. And that same question comes up with like commercial driver's license, like CDL licenses, because that's a federal license. So with some of the federal licenses, there are still some potential issues, yes. And that is just waiting on those federal regulations. I think will change. It's just, I just don't know when. That's a slow moving boat.
And now maybe slower than ever.
But yes, there is some potential problematic with federal licensing.
If I could add a comment, I think that Kevin's response really highlights how valuable it is for patients using medical cannabis to consult with a pharmacist in choosing products and understanding the risk profile. Because the reality is, if you're not familiar with cannabis products, you may not be aware of the time course of some of these actions. And especially for edibles, whether it be oral oils or edible gummies or other products, the onset can be quite delayed and the effects can be quite protracted. And driving impairment is a real thing and a real risk. And this is one of the ways that there are some unintended consequences of medical cannabis use if patients are not aware. So one of our challenges in Canada is that many patients or many individuals report both recreational and medical cannabis use, but only a minority of those reporting medical cannabis use are actually working with a physician who's authorizing access to the medical products and are talking to a healthcare provider. So there's a real disconnect between folks who are using for medical purposes and communication with a healthcare provider. And I'm going to guess that New York State probably would have similar patterns. This seems to be a pretty ubiquitous pattern. So it's really critical to have that conversation. And again, especially for people who may not be actively using and maybe trying medical products for the first time.
Yeah, and many of those patients are on other medications, and there are some potential additive side effects, additive impairment with some of these other medications. Even with some of the, eat a high-fat meal, an edible can affect you more so than on an empty stomach. So even what you eat can impact this, as well as the blend of cannabinoids. CBD can help ameliorate some of the impairing effects of THC. So if it's a product that's got 2 parts CBD to 1 part THC versus a high THC product, those will have wildly different impairment profiles. So it's very important to have that medical consultation.
I mean, I agree with you. I think having a pharmacist in a dispensary in New York really sets us apart from other states. I don't know if someone would know what actual dose of something might be, like a THC or a CBD, I don't know if they know that, some patients know that you probably shouldn't take THC during the day if you are cannabis naive. So then the pharmacist would say, hey, you know what, why don't you try like a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 high CBD formulation for daytime? So I think that guidance is really important so that it alleviates a lot of the trepidation and the fear that the patient might experience. Just to know that like you have someone that can guide you through the dosing and the ratios.
I don't
Yeah,
want to take
especially
us on a
because
digression, but is there a formal curriculum for New York State pharmacists in terms of training? Because I imagine there could be a lot of variability if there isn't a kind of certification or protocol for being a cannabis pharmacist.
Yeah, so in New York right now, all practitioners who are able to certify patients and pharmacists who work in dispensaries take an online course that's on our website. So is it a long, training program? No, I mean, I would say that when I worked in the dispensary, it was really self-taught, just a lot of research, looking at just so much information, going to conferences, and Kevin can probably attest to the same thing because we both did a lot of the same things. We collaborate a lot. We talked a lot about cannabis and dosing. So yeah, we would say that there was like some reference, but the training wasn't as intense, I think, that we would have liked.
I would
Some
agree.
room for
It's
improvement.
like a 2 to 4 hour continuing education course. I think one of them is through the answer page there. So there are,
Yeah.
it provides a groundwork, but it is not all encompassing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would chime right back in without all that. There is great variability, and it's a great question, James. It's something we don't hear a lot of people talking about. Sang and Kevin, I can say, are the best. I think so, and I've met almost everyone. And it was an honor to work with them. And I mean this because they really do their research. I just don't know that that's true with everybody. And you're right. It's something we should think about. Saying maybe you can take that onto your leadership. Maybe we can get a little bit more, a deeper training and a little bit more consistency framework. The formalized curriculum would be really good. Leslie, I see you and you've got your hand up. You're next.
Hi, how are you? So nice to hear the
Great.
discussion tonight. I wanted to know if you guys were aware that the governor proposed allowing law enforcement to use the odor of cannabis in certain traffic situations. Think if the drivers seem impaired or if there was an accident, and your opinion on that, if you heard about it and how that may affect patients feeling comfortable using cannabis.
I would say it comes back to that, assessment of impairment, because that has a lot of parallels to the odor of alcohol could stimulate a sobriety check. The odor of cannabis could potentially, elicit a sobriety check. And it comes back to taking your, if you're new to it, I suggest start low and go slow is always my motto when we're looking for that lowest effective dose. And if you're taking something new or something that you've never tried before, doing it in a safe environment so you know how it's going to affect you is very important. The worst thing you do is take an edible for the first time and then head out to do something or hop behind the wheel without knowing what the long-term effects are going to be. Because as Dr. MacKillop pointed out, they can hit you at a delayed onset and delayed effects. So I'm not necessarily opposed to it because it has those parallels with alcohol, and the odor of cannabis could be indicative of somebody using cannabis. That doesn't necessarily mean you're impaired. So if anything, it could, initiate a sobriety check, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing in my opinion.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank
Our
you.
next. Oh, good. You got it, Leslie. Is there any more? Do you have any more to the question?
No, that's it. Thank you.
But
Got it.
and just to add on top of that, coming back around on the research and training side, for the law enforcement side, having adequate training for them as far as how to evaluate somebody is also very important. So that research isn't just for supporting the patients; it's also on the law enforcement side too.
Yes, I totally agree with that, especially in regards to biases and who they pull over and that type of stuff. So, yeah.
Very familiar, unfortunately, to the darker days of the war on drugs and those who were, overly prosecuted. So that's really never going to be something that people are going to be too pleased with. I don't think. The next up we have Theodore. Theodore, I think I can unmute you unless if you're able to unmute yourself, just go ahead and start speaking. But I know he has a question for Sang. So hold on, Theodore. I'm asking you to unmute right now. I don't know if you're able to see that. There you go.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. I am a cultivator
Mm-hmm.
and I grow in my house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in this donate or get paid for your marijuana, and this partially twofold. I also want to know what's actually in my marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that some of the things that I use are supposed to be organic, but how do I really know?
Okay,
So
so question, do you have a cultivator license?
no, I don't.
Oh, so is that like a medical product?
No, I'm actually a gardener farmer. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of I want to get into aquaponics. This is a
Mm-hmm.
perfect crop that'll give me money to buy my equipment. That's my real end term. But I still would
Gotcha.
like to know what I actually have in my plant.
Well, I mean, you don't have to actually do research to know what's in your plant. You can get those tested by a lab.
I was just about to say the same, Theodore. You can go to any cannabis calibrated lab in the state, and I think you can.
Okay.
How do you find labs, Sang?
It's probably on the OCM website. I'm not too familiar, but yeah, there are labs that
I'm
will
sure
test
you
for
can
you.
just Google it too. I know of one
It's
lab
on
in
the website.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
think, Theodore, there are something like 14 operational labs at this time, something along that line of number. And you can walk in with your product anytime and have it tested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's 16 labs right now.
That was close.
You were close.
Good,
Very
good.
close.
And so saying, do you know he should check on the OCM website or just do the Google search, you think?
OCM website.
Okay, terrific. That's in the chat, Theodore. I put the cannabis.ny.gov in our chat. Okay,
Yes. Thank you.
great. Thanks so
Thank you.
much. Tanika, you're up. Is it Tanika from Seasoned Gives?
Hi everyone. My name
Oh,
is
different
Tanika.
Tanika. Hi,
Yeah.
Tanika.
Hello.
Hi.
So I had a few questions. I'm interested in cannabis research, and I just submitted a proposal to GenSpace, which is a community nonprofit lab. They're open to the public. And they do a lot of work to help people like who want to have careers in biotech or whatever get into the industry. And I left college in 2017. I dropped out, and I still have a love and a passion for biology. So joining the cannabis industry has been it has been an reintroductory experience into biology because and I've been telling people this, like, cannabis has been known to be the gateway drug, but I see cannabis as the gateway drug into STEM for a lot of, especially communities of color, because we're so familiar with it. Learning about the cannabinoids, and I proposed to study cannabis at the GenSpace lab because, like, for example, CBG is the mother of all cannabinoids. I was interested in seeing like how it metabolized or how it aged over time and then became like THC or CBD, and then eventually like CBN. I'm interested in witnessing that happen in real time or seeing how they move through the pathways. I study nutrition, so just thinking about bioavailability of certain compounds and how we can make certain things more available to the human body. And so I was questioning, like, would I need some type of license or some type of additional support from a more disciplinary scientist to go ahead and conduct research at like a community lab or so? That was one of my
Yeah.
questions.
You would definitely. Yeah, you would need that.
So
Okay.
saying she would she would have to apply for license with OCM and then she could go back to GenSpace. Do you
Yeah,
think?
she definitely would need the cannabis research license through
But
through the OCM.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as like I'm not with an educational institution, I'm an individual. So what would that process look like?
So you would have to, so you want to study cannabis that's already grown, and you want to basically check like the degradation of this product over time, right?
Yes.
I mean, you have to make sure that you have the infrastructure to do the study, right? Like, where is it grown? And then you would need a PI. You would need a study PI, like a primary investigator, you know?
Okay.
So yeah, so basically these are all the steps that you have to take to try to do research on your flower product.
Okay.
I imagine saying Tanika could maybe follow up with you
Yeah,
directly.
and that is one of the licenses, you know, the scope that we do get the grant licenses to, or for the applicants. It's to test like chemical potency and composition. So yeah, absolutely.
I would love that. I would love that. And I'm also considering so I would also, one of the subjects in addition to cannabis would be, this is unrelated, the chaga mushroom, because it has the melanin molecule in it. And I know that they're doing a lot of research on that. So those were like two of the like organisms that I'm really interested in, like just seeing how they operate. And my next question is on the scheduling. So I know we're like advocating for rescheduling, but what
Yeah.
are the discussions around like maybe descheduling? Because I'm from Jamaica, where we use the plant as like a sacramental tool. It's not always like used for recreation or like I mean they do use it like the folk medicine, so like herbal medicine and stuff, but like they use cannabis to like burn out a house like you would like sage or like frankincense and myrrh. So like what are the conversations? Do you guys have any more additional information on like the scheduling federally?
So I do not have any information about rescheduling or descheduling. So I don't have that information, but obviously it's a conversation that everyone's having and we're just waiting, right? You
Yeah.
know, basically right now as we stand, because it is federally illegal on the federal side, and because it's a Schedule 1, that is a huge barrier to, conducting research, right? So and there are a lot of these laws that like basically you can't, like if you are, let's say, an institution like a college or a university that gets federal funding, is really, again, really difficult because there's this thing called the Drug Free Schools and Communities Act. So if you're getting federal funding for your school, there's no way that you can do any research. So um so then basically what ends up happening is that the researchers are kind of stuck, and if they are allowed to do research, there might be like just some guardrails around that say, hey, you can only use federally approved cannabis,
Okay.
which is great, but not really, because then you can't really test the products that you want to test in the dosage forms that you want to test.
Yeah.
So I could say that's like one barrier right now to research on a federal level because of its scheduling, but I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, I don't really know if it gets rescheduled or descheduled. That I do not have the answer to.
I know there was a recommendation made to the federal government like 2 years ago to reschedule it to, I think, a Schedule 4, but I haven't seen any movement since. It's been
Yeah,
2 years.
I mean,
So
we have no choice right now but to kind
Yeah.
of wait and you know, wait and see what happens,
Yeah, when I'm looking for your current research, I'm usually looking to either Canada or Israel, where they have some federal support for research. And
Go
that's-
Canada.
Yes, go Canada.
Right.
Yes, we take
That's
a
right.
take a note from our neighbors to the north.
Yeah. So it's challenging right now, but in New York, some schools like the CUNYs and the SUNYs get some state support for cannabis research and study. So that's somewhere that you might be able to tap into to see, research can occur there. But yeah, I mean, I don't have the institutional research is pretty difficult at this point.
Saying, thank you for mentioning the SUNYs, actually. Tanika, up in the upper state, the consortias that are, there are 4 consortias in New York State that got money from the governor as part of the Social Equity Fund. We're one of them with BNCC, but the other 3 are SUNY Schenectady and those that are associated with them, SUNY Orange and those that are associated with them, and SUNY Niagara. And I'm fairly certain it's Schenectady and Orange who are doing the most with cultivation. And so, if you and I can talk offline, you can send me an email tomorrow and we can maybe set up a Teams call. We can talk further. I have some names I can connect you with, and we can at least start. I'm really glad you said that, saying you're right. There
Oh
are
yeah,
people.
and I do want to mention that, we are doing research with someone who works in a university. But you can't, there's no plant touching on campus, right?
Oh, okay.
But that's what I talked about with the collaborators, and that's how they can help you. So he's using their lab to study like genomics and things like that. So they're not there at the university, but they're at an offsite lab because that lab wants to collaborate on research. So Tamika, my suggestion is, fill out the consultation, the request for consultation form, so that we can work through, some of the things that, some of the questions that you have. I mean, we can try to find a way to do it, or for you to do it.
That
Oh,
would be
it's
so amazing.
Yeah, we can talk, we can talk through it and see if there's an option,
Thank you.
Sure.
Where can I find your emails?
I was saying you'll put yours in the chat and I'll do mine the same, okay?
Will do.
Yeah. Did
Thank
you scan the QR code for the request for consultation?
Maybe you can put that back up.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, let me do that now.
My email is in the chat, dears, for everybody to have. There's a question I want to make sure we don't miss it. Okay, so I'm going to ask it, saying, while you pull back up that QR code. It was TJ, I think it was. Yep, here we go. TJ is asking, saying, is the training program that New York requires taught by OCM folks, or is it through a third party?
So, it's a really good question. Obviously, education is so important if we're going to be out there talking to patients or consumers alike about cannabis. So, we are, looking into some education for, people, but that's all the information that I have right now. But we are working to initiate like an education program for sure.
So it sounds like it may be a blend. It may be OCM people who are teaching third-party curriculum, or it could be third-party folks that are brought in as consultants. If you look at the rollout of the adult use retail, some of the support the social equity and the card license holders got, it was a blend of both. So TJ, I wouldn't be at all surprised if maybe you get a little bit of everything once they launch the program.
Yeah, I mean, we hope to, we hope that it will be very comprehensive. Not just, talking about the pharmacology and the pharmacokinetics or the plant. We want to really focus on all the aspects of the plant, consulting a patient, how do you do that? So it's going to be pretty comprehensive, the way we're thinking about it, but that's all I know.
Well, that's a lot.
Hold on, let me try to scan this. And
if I could ask Sang a question, often people do look to Canada because legalization has been present federally for 6 years now, but we do have a fair number of challenges. And one of them is that our research regimen is not very different from New York State to the extent that you have to have research licenses. There are different research licenses. They pertain to, we have 4, 1 for analytics, 2 for each hospital, and 1 for the School of Medicine. But one of the challenges we have is the kinds of products that we can study in clinical trials. And specifically, Health Canada requires us to have what are called GMP certified products. And those are basically products that meet the same standards as a pharmaceutical. GMP stands for good manufacturing process.
Yeah. Right.
And most of the products that are available on the market legally are produced under GPP, or good production practices, as opposed to, good manufacturing processes. In any case, I wasn't sure if New York State had a policy on GMP versus GPP requirements for products, because that really changes the kinds of things you can do research on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that our products in New York are GMP.
Yeah,
Really?
our facility is CGMP certified.
Interesting. So all legal products are GMP, or medical products are GMP?
Definitely medical. I'm not sure about the adult use.
I wouldn't think it's much different for adult use.
The
I don't
testing is
see,
the testing is a little different.
oh, okay.
The distinction I often make is the GPP is like food quality, whereas GMP is pharmaceutical quality. So there's definitely like lower variances that are permitted and higher standards in terms of the facilities. But it sounds like that is already in place, which is a really a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, what I do know about testing for products in New York is that it's so stringent. It's so
Good.
stringent. So definitely I could attest to that. And that's like the lab regulation. So
Well, as we found, we thought that the standards were stringent here in the legal marketplace, but when we actually bought the products and tested them, we were disappointed that 40% of them were actually outside of the tolerance limits. Now they were all below the expected levels of THC, so there wasn't risk of overconsumption, for example, but essentially consumers were not getting as much THC or CBD as they thought in their product.
And I
And
remember
you know,
that.
as you,
Go ahead.
well, quickly,
ahead.
as you say that, James, I've realized we have been reading reports of lab findings coming back with conflicting, you know, different measurements. So maybe the adult use, I know the medical saying, I remember it well. There was one lab, state sanctioned, state lab. They
Yes.
were stringent. There was no, that
Good.
was one lab and that was the answer. That was it. The same lab that treated all the COVID testing. So yeah, in that way you can be stringent. But to James's point, I think as we get more and more labs online, right? It's going to be a little different.
Yeah, I remember very early on in the medical program, I don't know, 8 years ago, maybe there was a study done, or at least like potency studies on just CBD products. And it turned out a lot of, I don't know if you remember that, Kevin and
do. It was
Dr.
like
McKillop,
it was
but
like
it
more than
was just like
50%
mostly
of them
like
were
hemp oil,
off. Yeah.
you know, and not a lot of CBD in there.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
it was like the majority of the samples didn't meet labeling. It was surprising. It was like 60% or more were
Yeah.
not what they were labeled.
It's a really critical capacity because it's how we keep everybody honest, right? The products have to be accurate in terms of what's on the label and what people think they're consuming.
Well, it's absolutely true that quality assurance and quality control have at the core of any solid, trusted market. That's for sure. But it sounds like both Canada and the US have a little work to do in that in that sector. Well, listen, folks, I think we've come to the end of our time. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I do want to give everybody a quick opportunity. If you have a last minute burning question, don't be shy. Do offer it up in the chat or raise your hand.
So I put the email for our research, questions. So just go to research.ocm.ny.gov. I'll give you the information.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sang. I think this was one of the, I mean, to use the term robust is minimizing. I think this was one of the most interesting, fascinating. I couldn't keep up fast enough with my note taking. I learned a ton myself and I thought I knew everything. Only kidding. But on behalf of our audience, really, Dr. MacKillop and Sang and Kevin, I just can't thank you enough for your time, for your energy, for your efforts, for your organization. You all were just so accessible. You make this very, very complicated information extremely easy to digest. And you're all three, one better than the next, communicators. And that really is the key to it. Dr. MacKillop, you're stuck with us. Both of you, both doctors. And Sang and Kevin, once again, thank you so much. And everyone, we wish you the best nights ever. And if you have any further questions, there's my email in the chat. I can help you to connect with Dr. MacKillop or Kevin or Sang. And stay tuned. In April, where are we now? February, March. In April, our next virtual panel discussion topic will be on the very burning, pressing issue of banking. And the good news is our friends at OCM have just come out with a directory of banking. And as a result, 4 banks that are listed there, Ponce, Stearns, Valley Bank, and Hanover Bank, have actively connected with us here at Lehman to try to move forward the banking opportunities for our clients. And so that will be our next topic. So watch your constant contacts for that registration. And in the meantime, many, many thanks again to our esteemed panelists. Have a
Thank you so
wonderful,
much.
wonderful evening.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Great night.
Bye. Thank
everybody.
you.
Great panel, great discussion. Bye now, everyone.